He could put an end to this madness. He knew. He absolutely could slaughter every guard in this room without breaking a sweat. It would be like carving a cake. Fight his way to Uncle Viserys. Make him change his mind. Kill him if need be. He could butcher anyone and everyone who dared oppose him. It would be easy. So terribly easy. No one knew what he was truly capable of. No one could stop him. And then what? Reality sank in, seeped into his thoughts like the darkest of poisons. If he shed blood here, he could never take it back. Alicent, Lena, Rhaenyra.
Unbidden, his mind conjured up their faces among his thoughts. Their heartbroken expressions. The tears in their eyes. They'd think him a monster. They wouldn't understand. No one would. He'd be the butcher who put his father on the throne by force. A madman who catapulted the realm into war, one that wouldn't end until he or everyone who opposed him was dead. It was a war he would win. A war that would cost countless lives, but he would see the other side of. Many would not. He blew out an angry breath. I will stay. I know you will. Daemon clapped his shoulder and drew him into a crushing embrace. He found himself returning it stiffly. This wasn't what he wanted. None of it was. You must harden your heart in the days to come. His father whispered in his ear. Don't let those leeches sink their teeth into you. I'll be back soon enough. His piece said. He let him go and stood, stared at him for a long moment and marched to the door. He swung it open and didn't look back. Not once, not even when Ser Eric peeled off to follow him. Naruto glared at the door. Watched it close behind him. Calm. He must be calm. Had to be calm.
His right hand clenched into a fist. Blue eyes sparked red. He wasn't calm. Not at all.
A snarl tore out of him as his fist crashed through the door frame, spraying splinters in every direction. Once, twice, thrice now, until a fourth blow smashed it clean off its hinges and into the wall. Unsatisfied, he stalked after battered wood and tore it apart, beating it down until it was so much sawdust at his feet. It did precious little to assuage his temper. Damn it, damn Needle, damn him. He hadn't asked for this. For any of it. Someone coughed behind him. Only then did he realize Ser Eric hadn't yet left.
Now what? He glared bloody red daggers at him. Why are you still here?
To his credit, Eric at least managed to look somewhat contrite. I am sorry, my lord, but the king wishes to see you.
0. Naruto found his uncle stood before an altar of burning candles. Limned by decades worth of wax, it stood as a testament to the ages, a reminder of a kingdom that spanned the decades. Stern and strong, only growing longer and harder, made ever more powerful by the passage of time. Some might call that a portent, an example and warning in equal measure. The House of the Dragon stood strong and proud even now, more than a century after Aegon's death. He disagreed. For him, the wax represented not royalty but rot, an awful corruption that had slowly crept into the Targaryen dynasty until it became a blight. A wound that must be excised. And there atop the altar stood a giant dragon's skull. Larger than large, a giant among giants. Fake. He'd seen dragon bones before, and these were not those. It was good craftsmanship, but he knew the real from the fake. Kurama would have laughed at it. As it were, a small, despondent smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. You wanted to see me, uncle. Viserys was silent for a long, ponderous moment, running an open palm over the candles.
Valerian was the last living creature to have seen old Valyra before the doom. Here at last he looked upon the skull. All its greatness and all of its flaws. A moment of silence passed between the two of them. What I am about to tell you is a secret. It does not leave this room. He turned to face him, and Naruto found himself wincing at just how haggard the poor man looked. Do you understand?
He muttered his assent. This skull, a rusty chuckle pervaded the crypts as he looked back to him, is not real. Shortly before his death, King Jaehaerys ordered this made by the finest craftsmen the world over, then had them killed to protect the secret. It suits the world well to think that such a monster is dead, to believe that a creature like this no longer exists. Naruto found himself tilting his head. Had to play along here. Yet he does. He does, Viserys confirmed. He isn't dead then. No. Viserys shook his head in agreement. No, he is not. The Black Dread lives. My bond with him used to be so strong. He touched a candle and looked at the false skull with a rueful chuckle. It has faded in recent years, as has he, I expect, but he still persists. Would you believe he was last seen in Dorne only a week ago, near Sunspear? His heart sang. The journal he borrowed hadn't mentioned that bit. It is my belief that he is searching for something. Viserys. Something, not someone, his uncle didn't know. The realization shocked Naruto. It felt wrong to steal another man's dragon out from under him. But as Viserys' bond with Balerion had waned, so had his continued to wax and grow ever stronger. Sometimes when he closed his eyes, he could feel the old worm as he'd once felt Kurama, like some silent expectation gnawing at the back of his brain, as if he were waiting for some signal that he didn't know how to give. Was there some connection left there? But Viserys was looking to him, speaking once more. When you look at me, what do you see? Weakness, kindness, exhaustion, sadness and sorrow, Naruto said the latter. Fair, his uncle sighed. The dragons, then. When you look at them, what are your thoughts?
Pardon, here at last, his temper slipped its leash. You've scarcely said a word to me since Aunt Emma's funeral. You banished my father to fight in the Stepstones for something he said while drunk, kept me captive in the Red Keep as a hostage against him, and now you have your bloody blasted Kingsguard drag me down here to talk about dragons. A hostage? Viserys all but swelled with anger. Do you think so little of me, boy? You are my blood, the bloody of old Valyra. You are no hostage, despite what your foolish father may have you think.
Careful! Naruto stood his ground, idly fingering the dagger hidden up his sleeve. You may be my uncle, but I won't stand by and let you insult Daemon. Please, his uncle pleaded with him, voice softening. It's important. When you think of the dragons, what do you see? He looked back to the skull, considering. Fire and blood. Viserys quirked a pale brow and waved him on. Rhaenyra once told me something. Everyone says Targaryens are closer to gods than men. He waved a hand at the false skull mounted atop the altar. But they only say that because of our dragons. Without them, we're just like everyone else. Or so she'd think. He lifted his chin a little to stare the older man in the eye. But we are our dragons, just as our dragons are us. We bleed. We grow old. We die. But we do not go quietly. His answer seemed to mollify Viserys, for he nodded.
The idea that we control the dragons is an illusion. He paced away from him, hands clasped behind his back. They are a power man never should have trifled with. One that brought Valyria its doom. If we don't mind our own histories, it will do the same to us. Without warning, he spun back to face him. Any true Targaryen must understand this, to be king.
In a flash, Naruto's world shattered again.
I'm sorry to lay this burden upon you, nephew. His uncle stepped closer still as his mind scrambled to catch up. I have wasted these last years, wanting for a son. Rhaenyra and Emma have suffered for it, as has the realm, but you are the very best of your father, and your mother, though you knew her not. He flinched a little at the remark. You have proven yourself to be kind, caring, stern when need be, yet unafraid of battle. You are a just man. And I believe that, in time, you could be a great ruling king.
Naruto recoiled. He didn't want it. Daemon's your heir, not me. His uncle wouldn't be swayed. Your father was not made to wear the crown. But I believe that you are. No. This wasn't something he'd planned for. Not this. Never, ever this. He could see where it was going. The disaster that would follow. This would start a war. Lords and ladies the world over would tear one another apart to win his affections. If you want an heir name, Rhaenyra. He shook his head. I don't want it.
You must. His uncle seized him by the shoulders, shocking him with the intensity of his gaze. I love my daughter, but she is all that remains of her mother. If I name her heir, the realm will destroy her. Bit by bit, piece by painful piece. I see that now. As much as I dislike it, men would sooner set everything to the torch than allow a woman to seat the Iron Throne.
His temper sparked as he shook him off with a snarl. That's no reason not to try. She should be next in line. Viserys despair and looked to him. Do you believe she would make a good queen? Naruto opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again now. And closed it once more.
Would she make a good queen? In all honesty, he didn't know. She held the right by blood to be sure. But what had she been taught? Not much. Not enough.
He, on the other hand.
In his first life he'd ruled over an entire village, maintained peace and prosperity for his people, walking the razor's edge between chaos and order. In his second he'd studied his histories, pondered over the mistakes of kings and rulers past, and become convinced that the Targaryens as a whole were beginning to go mad. He would not. Indeed, he was uniquely positioned to prevent such a thing.
Rhaenyra was not.
As far as he knew, his cousin didn't even want to inherit. She wanted, well, he knew her wants very well. She'd told him them. She wanted to fly with Alicent on Dragonback, see the great wonders across the narrow sea and eat only cake. She wasn't worried about her position. She'd never once, in her life, mentioned wanting to be queen. If he passed this over, the burden would surely fall to her.
And then, where would they be?
The realm forced to swear their oaths to a mourning girl, a girl who would slowly be crushed beneath the weight of their expectations. He didn't want that for her. By the log, he didn't want that fate for anyone.
If he could spare her that pain. There it is, that keen mind of yours. Viserys spoke softly, earning a dark glower from him. You know full well the weight the crown holds. This is no trivial gesture, nephew. Dragonstone is one thing, but the Iron Throne is the most dangerous seat in the realm. Should you take it, you will have to marry. Take a wife. Father children. Secure your succession properly, as I could not. He looked away with a scowl. I'm well aware of that. You must be. Something in his uncle's voice had him looking back to him. For a moment in the candlelight he looked weathered, aged beyond his years. I will not marry again. I cannot. He shook his head, and for a fleeting instant, he glimpsed tears the eyes of his uncle. I dare not for fear of what it might do to me. He thought as much by all telling. His aunt and uncle had loved one another dearly. They'd spent most of their lives together. He would never again love another as he had her. Furthermore, marrying again so soon after declaring a new heir would only muddy the waters of succession. Time would tell if Viserys kept to his word. He hoped so, but many a man had made such promises in the past. Silence reigned between them. Viserys broke it first. Will you take up this mantle? Would he? Could he be a good king? He believed so, yes. He had the mind for it, if not the stomach. But becoming the heir, one day ruling over 7 kingdoms, did he dare? A true king was more than a Hawkage could ever be. He knew Daemon Dad might not take kindly to his decision, or might he be proud. There was truly no way of telling with him sometimes.
He tried to think of all the good he could do. And children, little ones running around underfoot. He might enjoy being a father again. He'd loused it up last time and learned his lesson. No, he wouldn't make that mistake again. Any child of his, son or daughter, he'd be there for. Completely.
I can choose my own wife. His uncle nodded. Whomever you wish. Then, yes. The word tasted like ash on his tongue. I'll do it. Good. Viserys almost seemed to sag before his eyes. Now, there is something else I need tell you. Naruto blew out an angry breath. Of course there was. What else could he possibly say that was worse than this?
It might be difficult for you to understand, but you must hear it. Our histories, as he looked on, his uncle paced away from the fire looking past the false skull anew. They tell us that Aegon looked across the Blackwater from Dragonstone and saw a rich land ripe for the capture. But ambition alone is not what drove him to conquest. It was a dream.
Dreams, eh? Lena had dreams. Dreams of dragons.
And just as Daenerys Forsay saw the end of Valyria, Viserys rambled on, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. 'Tis to begin with a terrible winter, gusting out of the distant north. Aegon saw absolute darkness riding on those winds. And whatever dwells within will destroy the land of the living. When this great winter comes, nephew, all of Westeros must stand against it.
Aye. Shiver stole up his spine.
And if the world of men is to survive, Viserys continued apace, heedless of the sudden dread he felt. A Targaryen must be seated on the Iron Throne. A king or queen strong enough to unite the realm against the cold and the dark. Aegon called his dream the Song of Ice and Fire.
There was something about those words that resonated within him. Where had he heard those words before? This secret has been passed from king to heir since Aegon's time. His uncle laid a hand on his shoulder, rooting him where he stood. And now you must promise to carry it. And protect it. Always? His grip tightened a bit, fingers digging desperately into his skin. Promise me this, Naruto. You must promise me. He heaved a sigh. I promise.
There, it was done. His word was his bond.
There could be no turning back. Not now, not ever. 0, 0. At long last. For the first time in decades. He sensed him. He knew where he was.
At long last he had purpose again. A mission, a goal.
Here and now, Valerian spread his great wings and took flight. 0, 0. Alicent found him in the gardens. In hindsight, Naruto wasn't all that hard to find. One had but to look for the silver armor of the Kingsguard to know he was near. Sir Eric. Sir Eric, she sketched a quick curtsy to the brothers. Is the prince within? The elder of the two nodded. He is, my lady. May I see him? They duo exchanged a wry look. Here to wish him luck? The former wore a bemused smile that put paid to her expectations.